I heard basically a note of pragmatism here that there's a big $80 billion, budget out there that, online video could compete with, and a good way to get at that is by talking the same language. And then I heard on the other hand that there's some other values and, metrics that we should be looking at that explain the nuances and the enhanced aspects of interactivity with online video. But I want to mention something that was some news that came up this morning. We reported on it at MediaPost. It's been out there, which was Brian Weezer, who's the industry forecaster at Interpublic's Magna, released his online ad spending forecast for the next 5 years out. And by the way, it's a pretty healthy outlook. I think he's projecting like 8% growth over the next 5 years. But the interesting part is that when he breaks it down between, branding and display-based media and performance and search-based media online, the growth rates are completely different. Basically, performance media are growing at about twice the rate over the next 5 years as brand-based metrics. So my question to you is, and it's more for Dave and Matt, why would you want to go with the horse that's growing, at a slower rate than the one that is growing well and is probably where the lion's share of the money is, but that the higher rate of growth is going to be coming from more performance-based media?
Well, who's to say that the money that moves out of television is going to move into branding? It may move out of there isn't a lot of direct response money in traditional media compared to the web. So the money that moves out of television may in fact move into performance-oriented web because we can measure so many more things, as these two folks say. But I'm talking about getting that money to move. And in order to get that money to move, you have to talk the language of the people who have got the money. And once we get it, then we can show them about all the other things that they can do. Maybe we use that as an add-on when we're trying to get the money too. Talk about all the other things we can do relative to engagement and time spent and interactivity, even though you don't want to put that on the table now. And it could be that a lot of branding money ends up in the area of direct response. Jim Mishkauskas once said that every client's a branding client until they get their first tracking report, right? And I believe that, Oh, if I moved this over here and I did this over here. And direct response is not a bad thing, all right? Performance is not a bad thing. And there's no question that reach and frequency is not a KPI, all right? But it is a good frame of reference.
Right. I couldn't agree more. In fact, one of the things we haven't enjoyed in our space that TV has enjoyed in the last few years as we've ridden through this recession, you may have noticed that a lot of the spend on TV was direct response. We, as Dave just mentioned, we don't have that business in our space. So it's a really important foundation that we have yet to establish that will come in on performance-based metrics. And I think that'll be good for the industry. In fact, when I look at the space and I think of some of the biggest inefficiency we have right now, we always talk about user-generated content and we talk about the low value in that content. Quite frankly, that could be very valuable content to a direct response advertiser. We have to make more efficient use out of the content that we have online, and I think a big part of that is DR.
So let me ask you all, is part of the fear of making that analogy the fact that in television, direct response, while it was extremely powerful ROI, usually had a very low CPM? I mean, it could be 10 cents on the dollar of a, okay.
How do you measure ROI on television, talk about direct response? You're looking for, I see something here and I do something over there. And the problem with online is we keep trying to get everything to do everything in this one space. Now, okay, interactivity, the fact that I can put forms in banners or all those kind of things, a level of engagement, interaction. Yes, we can do those things, but to negate everything to that is ridiculous. The fact that we've actually been able to see the effects of display media here driving search over there, where the natural clicks are going to happen, has been an advancement even from an online perspective. But that actually is natural to how I would sit there and watch TV and search on my laptop, or perhaps search on my mobile phone as I walk down the street. So this cross-channel connectivity isn't even seen in the sense of I'm looking for the interaction point in the immediacy of the display, I'm seeing it over here. And I'm just wrestling with this whole concept of what we mean by television. I mean, what my grand thought of television and what I think of television when it's pre-recorded, downloaded, bought, all the different ways I can consume the media of television today is radically different to what we were talking about even 10 years ago. And we're confined by our culture here in the West. I mean, if I go to Japan, TV's everywhere. In your car, on your mobile phone, and they've had it for donkey's years. So if I talk to them about TV advertising in Japan, they're automatically thinking about a mobile phone. Now, we haven't got the luxury here because we're still only 5 years into the online video space because we didn't see broadband until 2005, 2006. So we're not at that turning point of the way other cultures are. So that's limiting our thinking and what we even consider of online or television. And I think that's a key distinction we have to understand.
Well, the reality is that all television in the United States now is digital. And once it's digital, it has the ability to someday to be addressable and interactive and all those things. And you know, I think the mindsets that we're grappling with right now aren't consumer mindsets, they're really industry mindsets. And I guess what we're really wrestling with is the fact, do you want to go after an $80 billion pie, or do you want to nurture a $1 billion pie? And that's really what I want you to all address.
Your question, your previous question, Joe, was branding, right? Branding, advertising, and we all know that that's where a lot of that's where the biggest bucks are. So it's not enough to be able to you know, to look at video as an alternative to television. And I want to ask a question, if I may, because I know you're the guy asking questions. You know, because Matt and Dave had talked about, okay, let's start the conversations with CMOs and brand managers with GRPs. Open the discussion with GRPs, and then let other metrics come in, such as, you know, ROI, or, you know, whatever measures or whatever are the objectives behind a media plan, offline and online. But when you start talking about GRPs, when that's the opening dialogue, that already sets the course of budget allocation. Okay, regardless of how online video is going to be used or how strategic it's going to be in a digital plan. The fact remains, you start with GRPs, you start, you know, someone simplifies the whole process and says, well, this cost per rating point is much higher with this platform versus the other. Right away, there are discussions, decisions are made. Even before someone very smart strategically starts to say, we're going to use online video because it's going to do this, and this is going to be part of our digital campaign, and our digital campaign is going to accomplish these objectives, and my television plan is going to accomplish these objectives. So I go back to what I said. You use different media to accomplish different things. If they're supposed to accomplish different things, why start the conversation with a metric that's going to predetermine how different platforms are going to be used? That's my frustration.
But we're still making a distinction here about the platform. If I buy a new Sony television, it's running Google Android. Okay, that's fact. It's not online and television. That way of thinking is 10 years old. Today, it's not like that. Now, if I sit down with a CMO marketer and say, okay, you know 50% of your advertising is wasted, but you don't know which 50%, guess what? I now know someone who's sitting in the room. I can tell you within 2 minutes of using a remote control what gender and what age they are, and I can start targeting advertising to people in that room on a television set with the power of dynamic delivery, targeting, served online video over broadband connection speed, and I can start to reduce your 50% media wastage. Are you interested? And that's a different conversation. It's talking about GRP.
That's right. Internet advertising, or digital advertising, even in all of its platforms, right, is cheaper than television advertising on a CPM or cost per GRP basis. That fact alone, showing that they can move money from a dying medium, a medium that is going to change, to a medium that's vital and growing and where the eyeballs are going. And by the way, you can do it and make your money go further if you give them that information. That's powerful information to get the ball rolling in the right direction. And why would you go and say, oh, don't worry about all that. Before you move, I need you to learn all this other stuff, right?